Eos 7 was a forgotten dot on the outer rim. Dust-colored skies, 2 small oceans, and nothing worth exporting. It had no natural defenses, no fleets in orbit, and no significance in human strategic maps. At least, not anymore. The Earth Federation had established it nearly 70 years ago as a remote scientific outpost. The last military presence left 2 decades earlier. In galactic terms, it was a whisper in the void. A population of just over 9,000 lived quietly in modular cities, sunk deep into the planet's crust to avoid solar storms. Most were scientists, miners, or ex-military pensioners. Some worked on deep space propulsion theories. Others gardened. On paper, Eos 7 was Earth's weakest colony, unprotected, under-resourced, and largely ignored by both friend and foe. But word of human expansion traveled far, and not every ear hearing it was friendly. The Thalzar Dominion had no regard for subtlety. Their doctrine was brute force and swift conquest. In recent cycles, they had swallowed entire border systems from the Loxary, shattered the defensive moons of the Keltai, and routed a Grellan fortress in under 3 days. The Thalzar Empire didn't believe in mercy or diplomacy. They sent scouts, received telemetry, analyzed weakness, and struck. When Eos 7 showed up on their scans as an unguarded, minimally armed colony with no active orbital defense grid, their decision was immediate. A single battle group would suffice. 6 destroyers, 2 carriers, and 1 command dreadnought. The mission wasn't marked as combat. It was listed as a planetary acquisition and suppression. No real resistance was expected. Their intelligence reports were accurate. Superficially, no energy shields, no active weapon emplacements. A single decrepit orbital platform, offline, power readings consistent with low-grade civilian infrastructure, no significant vehicle movement. They laughed. They called it the Graveyard Garden. Even internal Earth logs showed the planet had received a military resupply in over 14 years. What none of the reports mentioned was the man in charge of the colony. Halvor Reed, officially the colonial governor, was a retired fleet command strategist. Not disgraced, not forgotten, just too dangerous to be politically tolerated. His methods during the Martel rebellions were effective but cold, his efficiency a threat to those who valued ceremony over results. So he was honorably reassigned to Eos 7, a retirement gift with breathable air and no responsibilities. That suited Reed just fine. He didn't need permission to prepare. The colonists respected him. They let him build his emergency systems. Most never asked what those really were. When he requested 10% of the colony's annual budget for defensive research, no one questioned it. He was old. Let him tinker. So he tinkered. By the time the Thalzar fleet crossed the system's edge, he was ready. He had watched their movements in neighboring sectors. He had decoded their fleet formations and studied their response cycles. Eos 7 had been waiting for them for 7 years. There were no orbital warnings when the Thalzar arrived. The colony's long-range comms went dark 30 minutes prior, cut from the outside. Satellites blinked out. The night sky shimmered with unnatural flickers as the dreadnought began atmospheric insertion. The first destroyers aligned for orbital bombardment. Dropships detached from the carriers in stagger formation, aimed directly at the colony's largest residential zone. Inside the command chamber, buried beneath a mountain range, Reed stood motionless. He watched the enemy fleet through silent screens, face still, eyes calculating. His staff, 7 men and women trained by him over the last decade, stood ready. Each had a terminal hardwired into a network that was never mapped, never updated into any public record. The colony streets were empty, homes powered down. No resistance formed. The aliens expected fear. They found silence. Thalzar ground units began landing. Their armored troops laughed as they exited their dropships. Civilian-grade structures around them barely held against the wind. No challenge, no glory, just another footnote in their expansion logs. They never saw the first rail lance. It sliced through the lead dropship midair, splitting it cleanly before it even reached touchdown. No sound, no flash, just metal separating like paper. The pieces slammed into opposite cliff faces. No survivors. Within 20 seconds, 3 more dropships disintegrated mid-descent. The Thalzar comms flared with alerts. Their battlefield sensors found nothing. No projectile paths, no power trails, no thermal spikes. The remaining troops landed fast and spread wide, searching for enemy contact. They found only shadows. Reed didn't speak. He simply tapped the console twice. In hidden craters surrounding the city, autonomous drones burst from burial pods. Black, sleek, silent, and programmed with one mission: erase. Not kill, not wound. Erase. Their rounds vaporized flesh on contact. They moved in synchronized patterns that mimicked swarm predators. Thalzar soldiers vanished before alarms could register. Above, the orbital platform came to life. No fanfare, no startup sequence, just a silent pivot, a charge coil spinning faster than light until a spike of gravity inverted reality for 1 second. The command dreadnought, the most powerful ship in the enemy fleet, folded in on itself and vanished, sucked into its own mass without a trace. Not even debris escaped. Then the comms lit up. For the first and last time, Halvar Reed appeared on the enemy's command screen. His voice was flat, his face unreadable. 7 minutes, he said. That's all I need. Then the signal cut. The alien fleet hesitated. Their battle AI demanded input, orders, new threat analysis. They didn't realize the game was already over. In that first minute, EOS 7 lost nothing. No alarms had sounded in the colony. No structures damaged. No civilians harmed. And yet, over half the enemy ground force was gone. Their commander disintegrated with his ship. The rest were running protocols for a kind of war they'd never imagined humans capable of. There was no clear enemy, no heat trails, no warning systems, just erasure. Reed watched the clock tick forward. 1 minute down, 6 to go. At the 61-second mark, the Thalzar formation began to tighten. The fleet's remaining commanders initiated evasive maneuvers and pushed for high orbit. Their priorities shifted from invasion to survival. They still hadn't identified the source of the dreadnought's collapse. The absence of debris, heat, or plasma confirmed their worst suspicion. Some form of singularity weapon, something beyond their defense protocols. The weapon had struck once without warning. There was no guarantee it wouldn't fire again. The colony's surface remained dormant on scans. No energy surges, no active defense installations. Their instruments still reported no sign of hostile units. They couldn't reconcile the destruction with the data. The commanders assumed there had to be cloaked artillery platforms or orbit-to-surface satellite arrays hidden from detection. They didn't consider that the colony had nothing in orbit, because everything lethal was buried beneath their boots. At 1 minute and 30 seconds, 2 full assault squads regrouped in the colony center. 40 heavily armored Thalzar warriors, each armed with plasma repeaters and kinetic shields, took cover behind civilian structures and scanned for targets. The silence unnerved them. They opened a wideband broadcast, demanding surrender, offering mercy. No reply. At 1 minute and 50 seconds, the lead squad moved toward the administrative dome, a central hub with no visible defenses. They breached the entrance. Inside, they found nothing but powered-down terminals and empty hallways. Just before the second squad entered, a high-frequency sound burst shattered every internal comm unit. The soldiers dropped, clutching their ears. Several began seizing. At exactly 2 minutes, micro-turrets deployed from ceiling panels. They didn't fire bullets or lasers. They released clouds of carbon-based nanites, programmed to seek specific heat signatures and electrical pulses. The nanites short-circuited armor, disabled weapons, and entered the exposed respiratory tracts of anything biological. Within 8 seconds, both squads were silenced. Their corpses remained standing, locked in rigor by internal neural failure. 2 minutes, 15 seconds. A new wave of dropships attempted a landing behind the ridgeline, away from a colony. They deployed light tanks and reconnaissance drones. The terrain was rough but passable. They believed they had avoided the colony's defensive net. They hadn't. On the 3rd minute, as they descended into a ravine, every vehicle lost propulsion. Magnetic disruption fields activated from embedded pylons disguised as rocks. One by one, their systems shut down. Boots hit the ground. Infantry disembarked, rifles raised, scanning the cliffs. Nothing moved. Then the cliffs moved. Walls of the ravine peeled away to reveal long, dormant platforms. Angled launch tubes holding ceramic-clad spike drones. They activated silently. Within 4 seconds, every Thalzar trooper in the ravine was dead. No screams, no fire, just stillness and the faint scent of ozone. Back in orbit, the Thalzar command was splintering. 2 destroyers broke formation and began charging their jump drives. Orders were conflicted. Hold the line, await ground success, retaliate with bombardment. One carrier prepared to launch all remaining fighter wings. At 3 minutes, the orbital platform realigned. It hadn't fired again. That was the genius of it. Just by existing, by having taken down the dreadnought with single shot, it created hesitation. Every ship considered itself the next target. Every captain feared being erased without warning. Governor Reed understood that fear. He didn't need more shots. He needed the illusion of infinite readiness. At 3 minutes and 20 seconds, EO7's second contingency engaged. 14 missiles launched from beneath the colony's crust, not from silos. These weren't visible structures, but from deep shaft cavities hidden inside dormant mining rigs. The payloads were low signal, no heat, no light kinetic delivery systems. Their trajectories were randomized mid-flight via gravitational steering systems. They were functionally invisible until impact. Each missile had a target. Each one had been pre-programmed with Thalzar schematics. Reed had acquired them through unofficial channels, pirate networks, black market AI traders, even a rogue Grellan ambassador. He had mapped every weak point in the Thalzar fleet. 3 minutes, 45 seconds. The first missile struck a destroyer between its power core and coolant module. The vessel didn't explode. It fractured into 3 pieces and drifted lifelessly. The second missile hit the forward hangar of a carrier mid-launch. The resulting chain reaction ignited its internal atmosphere, ripping it in half. By 4 minutes, 5 Thalzar ships were gone, the 6th limp with venting plasma, its rear engines dead. 2 ships remained, both spinning erratically, blind to the battlefield. Their sensors were useless. The targeting AI began cycling errors. Governor Reed's command room remained silent. The colonists underground stayed in lockdown. The colony's surface still appeared empty. No human units had fired a weapon. No soldier had drawn blood. The invaders were being eliminated by systems that didn't look like weapons. That was the point. By 4 minutes and 20 seconds, the Thalzar fleet's remaining command vessel attempted a distress signal. The moment it engaged its long-range beacon, it triggered the last phase of Reed's protocol. The signal bounced off an array buried beneath the colony. The array mimicked Thalzar command codes, precisely replicated using audio samples captured during the early seconds of invasion. The signal was then retransmitted to the remaining ships in the fleet using a modified burst pattern that Thalzar AIs interpreted as fire override. In 4 minutes, 30 seconds, the final 2 Thalzar ships began firing on each other. Their AIs fought the override signal. One ship disabled its own targeting module. The other attempted to jettison its main cannon. Both failed. Their last transmissions were encrypted and incomplete, distorted by the artificial signal storm now flooding their networks. For minutes, 45 seconds. A final kinetic bolt from the orbital platform, non-singularity, standard mass driver, punched through the crippled carrier's core. It folded, then burned. By the 5-minute mark, no functional Thalzar ships remained. On the ground, a few surviving troops scattered across the outskirts. They fled into canyons and old mining shafts. They thought they could hide, escape, send word. They didn't understand that the tunnels they ran into were never built for mining. Reed had dug them for containment. Automated hunter drones activated, modeled after extinct Earth predators. They track motion and see O2. No lights, no engines, just silent algorithms and gravity-assisted movement. Each drone had a kill log. None returned empty. By 6 minutes, the battlefield was clean. No explosions, no smoke, no debris fields. Just silence. Reed stood in front of his console, hands behind his back, eyes on the countdown. 1 minute remained. At 6 minutes and 1 second, however, Reed issued a single command to his staff. Initiate post-engagement silence protocol. It wasn't a celebration. There was no cheering, no high fives. The team worked with mechanical precision, fingers gliding over ancient tactile keyboards connected to local-only systems, isolated by design, immune to outside interference. External broadcast jammers remain active. The Thalzar distress beacon had been neutralized mid-transmission, ensuring no clean signal had escaped the system. The debris in orbit drifted without guidance. Engine fragments, twisted hull plating, chunks of alloys slowly falling toward the atmosphere, silent monuments to miscalculation. At 6 minutes and 15 seconds, Reed's team began erasing every trace of what had occurred. Sensor logs purged, weapon telemetry overwritten, defense systems shut down and buried. The orbital platform deactivated and re-entered its dormant cycle, powered by geothermal coils 6 kilometers beneath the surface. The colony's comm systems were still offline, outwardly appearing damaged or inoperative. Any Federation ship arriving later would find no evidence of combat, no broadcast logs, no wreckage in coherent pattern, no weapon radiation spikes. EOS 7 would still look like the weak, boring outpost it had always been. At 6 minutes and 30 seconds, the final sweep drone completed its run through the mining ravine. It tagged the last Thalzar corpse for disposal and returned to its charging cradle. Reed glanced at the screen, nodded once, and tapped the sequence that permanently shut the drone's kill routines. No one had died on EOS 7. Not a single colonist had lifted a weapon. The only blood spilled was alien. And even that had been minimal. The defense network had functioned exactly as intended. Automatic, precise, deniable. At 6 minutes, 45 seconds, Reed stood alone in the chamber. His staff had been dismissed, orders already executed. Outside, the sun was beginning to rise, pale and thin to the planet's dusty atmosphere. The sky looked just as it had the day before. Nothing in the landscape suggested that an alien war fleet had just been annihilated. He turned to a side panel, one not connected to the main system. Inside, a small locked compartment opened. From it, he pulled a data crystal. This contained the full archive, every second of the attack, every casualty, every defense activation, every command issued. Not for use, not for revenge, just in case. He placed it inside a vault the size of a fist, embedded in the floor, then sealed it with a pressure-lock mechanism older than he was. It clicked shut with a hiss. The crystal would sit there untouched unless someone pried it from the rock. At exactly 7 minutes, a silence deeper than space settled over EOS 7. The countdown ended. There were no more threats, no more enemies. The colony stood whole, alive. Reed didn't smile. He didn't relax. He simply returned to his desk and resumed studying solar flare cycles. His cover work, the one he'd maintained for years. On his screen, graphs resumed scrolling. Data filled the room again like nothing had happened. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Thalzar Dominion had a problem they didn't understand yet. A battle group had gone dark. No communication. No return. No debris fields traceable beyond system entry. 1 dreadnought, 6 destroyers, 2 carriers for 1,000 troops, all missing. There were no enemy fleet sightings nearby. No other galactic powers had claimed responsibility. The system had been tagged as low threat, low value. The command board dismissed it at first as a glitch. Then came the loss of a scout ship sent to investigate. It never even made it to planetary orbit. Its last signal showed a sharp gravitational anomaly, followed by a telemetry blackout. It vanished in the same pattern as the dreadnought. The Dominion's military high command began to grow suspicious. They dispatched a probe swarm. It never returned. This time, Reed had nothing to do with it. The gravitational anomaly was natural, an old, decaying dwarf moon creating a local space distortion. But the timing was perfect. The Thalzar interpreted it as part of the same trap, a larger defense mechanism, something beyond their understanding. They marked the system as Class Red, contaminated, no further missions authorized. To the Thalzar, the loss became myth. Some called it the Void Culling. Others whispered of a hidden Terran weapon, a final defense platform Earth had never publicly acknowledged. Stories spread quickly in militaristic cultures. Cowards warned of planet killer tech. Fanatics claimed the humans had summoned a cosmic predator. One commander insisted the entire fleet had been sacrificed as a ritual. No one believed it had simply been a trap laid by one man. The result was the same. EOS 7 was forgotten again. Back on the colony, things returned to normal. Greenhouses resumed growing. Data labs returned to processing theoretical propulsion data. Children returned to their learning domes. The colonists had no idea what had occurred. Only a handful of staff ever knew, and they were bound by more than duty. They understood what they protected. For them, it wasn't just a colony. It was proof that humanity's strength wasn't just in numbers or fleets or brute force. It was in patience, in preparation, in remembering how to survive when others forgot how to think. Reed never contacted Earth. There was no report, no request for recognition. He understood the weight of attention. The moment someone from the Federation knew what he'd done, they'd want to replicate it, weaponize it, parade it. He didn't trust politicians with things they didn't understand. He trusted silence more than applause. Time passed. The seasons changed. The colony thrived. A scout vessel from the Earth Federation passed through the system nearly 4 months later. It ran standard scans, found nothing unusual, and moved on. Its report read, EOS 7, status green. Life signs consistent. Infrastructure minimal. No activity of interest. Just as Reed wanted. Back in the command chamber, he occasionally walked the corridor that housed the hidden defense controls. He didn't touch anything. He simply checked the room, dusted it, maintained it. He knew the Thalzar weren't the only ones watching. Someday, someone else would come. They'd see the same empty skies, the same weak surface, the same lack of defenses. And if they made the same mistake, Reed would only need 7 minutes. Again, at 7 minutes and 10 seconds, the colony's automated systems began transitioning to standard peacetime protocols. Subterranean turbines spun down from high alert, oxygen recyclers optimized efficiency, and surface sensors recalibrated to civilian parameters. The silence, once ominous, now carried a fragile peace. But beneath that calm was a lesson carved in steel and strategy. EOS 7 had been dismissed by the galaxy as humanity's weakest colony, a backwater with little military value, poor resources, and a handful of colonists more focused on survival than war. That assumption was the key to its defense. While the Thalzar Empire concentrated forces on more prominent targets, Reed and his team engineered a fortress of invisibility and subtle lethality, one that operated under the radar of both enemies and allies. The underground defense network was not just a collection of weapons. It was a symphony of timing, deception, and ruthless efficiency. The colony's surface might have looked defenseless, but the real strength lay in an invisible architecture. Geothermal power plants doubling as weapon platforms, mining shafts rigged with nanite dispersal systems, and AI-controlled drones modeled after extinct Earth predators. Silent sentinels tracking every heat signature, every carbon trace. Reed's doctrine rejected brute force in favor of anticipation. Every attack vector was predicted. Every weakness in the Thalzar fleet studied and exploited. The colony wasn't a weak link. It was a trap, a crucible designed to expose arrogance. The invaders had believed they faced a disorganized outpost, an easy target. Instead, they walked into a cage that closed without a sound. In the weeks after the attack, intelligence networks across the Federation remained silent about EOS 7's victory. There was no formal commendation, no public recognition. Humanity's secret weapon was not glory. It was survival and deterrence. The message was clear. Underestimate us, and you will vanish before you understand what struck you. Other colonies took note, quietly upgrading defenses, studying the tactics employed. The victory became a whispered legend, a blueprint for turning weakness into unbreakable strength. The story of EOS 7 wasn't just about one battle. It was a testament to human resilience, ingenuity, and the quiet ferocity that could erupt when pushed beyond the brink. Hal Verree continued his watch, knowing the galaxy would never truly rest. Threats would rise, empires would expand, and new challenges would emerge. But EOS 7 stood ready, not with overwhelming force, but with a certainty that sometimes the weakest colony could be the deadliest trap. And if the Thalzar or any other foe returned, they would have only 7 minutes before their entire fleet became a memory. The colony's lights flickered back to life, systems humming softly beneath the surface. The humans carried on, unaware the war fought on their behalf. In silence and shadows, the galaxy might forget the battle, but EOS 7 would never forget its purpose. In the vast darkness of space, that was enough.